Society Matters.
Welcome, everyone, to our next session of our podcast, Legacy Chronicles, Honoring the Past and Shaping the Future. And I am Donna Rosenblum, your host and Director of Education here at HMTC. And I have with me today a very good friend and colleague, Meryl Menashe, who is going to talk about not just being a second generation, but really talking about the educational component and all the work that she has done in her career. We don't have time for all of it, Meryl, but we will certainly talk about many things. So thank you so much for joining us, Meryl.
It is my pleasure to be here. It's always my pleasure to be here.
Yes, yes. So let's start at the beginning and talk briefly about your family history, your survivor parents. Give us a little background.
Okay, Dad's from Poland. Mom was from Brooklyn. So that in itself was a little problematic upbringing, especially when Mom would say, "You're so much like your father." It used to drive her nuts. When I was a kid, I knew that my father was from someplace different, that something really bad happened. And we had a lot of people in the community that also had bad things happen, and they had accents and they had numbers. I had no idea what any of that meant. I must have known something because I used to hide in my closet to see if I could hide from the Nazis, and I used to put things over my head in the closet. Dad would always talk about, oh, it doesn't matter what I eat, as long as there's food, I'm good. High standards, you don't want to disappoint your survivor parent. Dad wasn't your typical hovering parent. He would let me go out and do things, and then when I messed up, he would lecture me and then I never did that again. So it was a wonderful, delicious upbringing, and because I didn't have enough survivors in my life, when I got married, I married somebody who also had a survivor dad who was from Greece. But I should go back to my father's history just a little
If you
bit.
want to just talk about Poland, like where, what happened briefly.
Very, very briefly, Dad was from a little shtetl in Blazowa, Poland. He was went to military school, so when the war broke out, he became an officer, and he was immediately put into the Polish army. Before that, he was destined to be the town doctor. He had a girlfriend. His life was laid out for him when it was interrupted by the war. In the army, he was captured by the Germans, thought not a good place for a Jewish boy to be, escaped with two others, got picked up by the Russians, who very kindly offered him the hospitality of Siberia, which he told me about all the time, and we did a lot of arguing about that. From Siberia, he ends up in Palestine, where he then, speaking 7 languages, helped people trying to sneak into Palestine because they weren't allowed, Jews weren't allowed. And then when Israel was made a state and war was declared, he was in the army. And eventually,
What year did he get to Palestine?
1944.
Okay.
He was in a refugee camp when his cousin, who was a doctor from Palestine, saw him and said, "You're not going into Anders' army, you're coming home with me."
Okay. All right. How old were you when you kind of figured out that your dad wasn't like other dads?
My dad was like a lot of other dads because of where I grew up.
Okay.
There were a lot of survivors around. He was different. I was almost, because he didn't have numbers. He wasn't in a camp, and in those days, if you weren't in a camp, you weren't a survivor. So that's a whole nother conversation.
Yes.
And I was about 8 or 9 when I was hiding in the closet. So I knew that bad things happened to him, and I didn't know the scope at all of what had happened. And when his friends came over and his cousins came over, all I wanted to do was sit by them and listen to their stories.
And they let you? Your father didn't try to shield you? Or tell you to leave the room?
No, Mom said, "Why don't you go out and play?" I said, "Jack Eisner's here. He was in the Warsaw Ghetto. I'm not going anywhere."
Right. So you understood that maybe not the concept that they were Holocaust survivors, but you had an understanding of the situation.
Yes, I definitely had an understanding, and until I got older and really studied it, I really learned what it was.
When did you say that click happened? When were you old enough to understand?
Okay, I was in high school.
Okay.
And I badgered my father to tell me things, and he would tell me about his childhood in glowing terms. He would tell me about his war experience. He didn't really, either I didn't badger him about his experience in Palestine turned Israel, or he didn't want to talk about it, one or the other, because things were for him, very difficult there. And so I guess, so in high school, and then when I was teaching, I said, Dad, you need to come speak to my classes. And then he spoke to my class, and that's when I really, really, for the first time, knew the depth of his experience. And when he passed, I found notebooks that he had written things in. I actually have them with me because they give me support. And things that he had written down and saved from his time over there.
So when did you decide you wanted to go into teaching? How did that come about?
Gee, playing school at 5 years old might be it.
Yeah.
As I got older, I loved history. I wanted to be a history teacher, and I was wisely advised, you'll never get a job, don't do that. But I'm stubborn, and I didn't listen. So I was majoring in history, and I was majoring in American history, and it was time to do the thesis paper, and my advisor said, I said, I want to do it on the Holocaust. He goes, you can't. You're an American history major. I said, what if I do it from an American point of view? Can I do that? And that's what I did.
Okay.
So I was hooked from Anne Frank. Is that a cliche?
Yeah.
But I was hooked from Anne Frank.
Fabulous. So that led you, obviously, you became a classroom teacher. You spent your career as an educator. When did HMTC come into the fold?
When did HMTC become part of my life and part of my heart? In 1998, yes, I'm dating myself, there was a 3-day seminar offered by the first educational director, Irving Roth. I have to say, I'm very proud to say I have served under every chair in this center and every education director. Irving was only the director for a little bit of time.
Yes.
And it was a 3-day seminar, and I never looked back after that. I've been here every year doing different things, different initiatives. It was very sad when Irving wasn't here, but I was also blessed with the survivors that were here that taught me so much, that built this place into what it is, with their heart, with their stories, with their messages, like how to be a good person and do the right thing, by Werner Reich. Should I name them all?
Sure.
I don't want to leave anybody out.
No.
I remember the days when we used to come here and we didn't have a museum.
Right.
We had posters on the wall from the ADL, and the survivors would teach the kids or the adults that came in using the posters and then give testimony. And they taught me everything I know about history, about understanding the Holocaust, what it is. Excuse me. Lillian Gordman did a displaced persons exhibit, which was something I hadn't thought much of. And being here, not only, I shouldn't only mention survivors, there was Gloria Glantz from Port Washington. We did a lot of different programs together. We did professional development, which was, I just wish
and tolerance training.
Educational advice.
Under Regina White. We were on the Educational Advisory Committee
Yes,
together.
we were.
That's when we first met in the late
plan.
90s. I guess that's when it was.
And I have to thank them because from Regina, Dr. White encouraged me to apply for the Museum Teacher Fellowship, which she probably had a hand in making sure I received it. And then they said, you got to go on the Vlatka trip. And that's a resistance trip founded by Vlatka Mead. And what I learned the most, I would say, from Vlatka and Irving was it's so important to teach the teachers.
Right.
And that is what I love to teach this. I love to talk about this. Just push my button and I'll get going.
Yeah. So, yeah. All right. So you have been involved with our educational mission since the late 90s.
Yes, and I was on the museum exhibit committee.
Okay.
So then we built that, and the museum exhibit has grown beautifully over time. And I remember sitting at committees with survivors. This was the best part. You're sitting at the table, and I could see it as right now. Werner says, we're not going to be here forever. Get us on tape. And gratefully, we got them all on tape. They're in the galleries. So when I come in with a group, I'm introducing them to all my friends.
Right. Yeah. Wonderful. So that's a lot.
It is.
And we are so grateful to have you and to work with you and to have all your educational expertise, which is wonderful. We were just talking as we sat down for this podcast for other things to do. Now that we're tackling social media and other campaigns,
So
it just continues. Meryl and I remember the days where you couldn't look anything up on the internet and lessons were truly crafted by hand. Very different time.
I was just talking about that yesterday.
Yeah.
Where I know I'm going to date myself. Now, yes, Google, you have the answer.
Right.
We used to have to dig. We have to go through card catalogs and books and read them and digest them and not have everything handed to us. And I think I see that coming back a little bit.
Yes.
Where, kids need to learn how to read and write with print and paper before you could start. Not, is my opinion.
Right. And I do think that there's a very important balance, and I believe that many teachers and school districts recognize the need for the balance of tech versus regular print resources and old-fashioned note-taking. And I mean, kids have to understand how to articulate thoughts.
Yeah, you can't take an essay from Chat GTP or whatever it is. You can't take an essay off of there if you don't know the content. You don't know how to write it yourself.
Right. It's only helpful if you know
exactly
what you're looking for. So again, these are the same arguments and things that have been around for a long time.
But we should talk about the garden just a wee bit.
Yes, we can absolutely go right ahead. Let's talk about the children's garden. Go ahead.
The children's garden was Irving envisioned it when he was the education director years ago. He wanted little Janusz Korczaks all over because Janusz Korczak was a great, wonderful man and should be honored and is honored in the garden. I was very proud. I don't do plants. I don't know. It's not my expertise.
That's a Yolanda.
That's Yolanda and Bob Prager. God bless them. They're wonderful.
They do it all.
The garden is beautiful, but the stanchions, the words in the garden were meant to expand the mission of the museum and focus on aspects of the Holocaust that when people are out there, they could meditate and reflect on what they saw inside or just sit there and read one of these stanchions and independently and think and reflect. Right. Yes. There are warning signs there that we should all be looking at. We've added the stone for October 7th. I think we're the only museum that has a memorial to October 7th in our museum.
Yeah. So, and now we have the kinder transport bench in the children's garden now, and we have other lovely things that are coming our way, which we won't reveal yet. They'll be a big surprise.
Yeah, but what I love is when I'm greeted by the photos that are at the exhibit entrance of our people that are no longer here. Yeah. Oh, I forgot Ethel. We can't forget Ethel.
Nope. That's
another Ethel Katz. I like I said, I was raised by the great ones. Yes, my father and my mother raised me, but my Holocaust life, I was raised by giants. They were heroes. And you're also talking about people that are not connected to the museum that were a great impact on my life.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess my question, and I understand, but why do you do what you do? When people look at you and say, why do you continue to do this? You've done this your whole life. Like, when are you going to hang up the towel?
I've tried many times.
Yeah.
I have tried to hang it up. I retired from the classroom.
2016.
I know, 9 years ago. I know.
Yeah.
You remember?
I remember.
I retired from the classroom in 2016 with the intent of throwing myself into Holocaust work for the next 5 or 6 years. I agreed to work with Irving and go with him on his school trips. We worked in the museum together, in his museum together, and worked on a propaganda project and a whole bunch of other things. The best 6 years of my life. Shh, don't tell the other people. It was a privilege to ride with him and learn from him and be with him. And I, again, worked on some projects here, And then, sadly, a lot of the survivors that I felt that I was that close with, that I felt like were surrogate parents, passed away, and it was very hard to do that work. So I said, okay, step away. I retired. I did what you're supposed to do. I went to Florida for the winter. That's, where they send us when we retire. And I was enjoying the life in Florida and stepping away. I was cutting the cord, and I couldn't do it. I have Irving in my head. I have Werner in my head. I have David in my head, who said to me, I can't do this anymore, on his deathbed. I can't do this anymore. You get it. You need to keep teaching. So that kind of stuck with me, and that was at least 10, 15, no, that was like...
he was 2013. He passed away, yeah. I think it was 2013, yeah. I know, it's been a long time.
It's a long time, and that's, like I said, and then every time I try to walk away, I think about the voices that we've lost, that I'm privileged to have known deeply and know their thoughts and have lots of writings from them, and hope to continue to speak for them because they can't. And I'll stop when Irving stopped and when Werner stopped with their last breath.
That's right.
Both of them.
Yep. So I know that you spend your winters in Florida. Lucky you. Someday I'll join you, but not yet. And I know that you continue to advocate for HMTC there. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing in the Florida area.
Well, something in Florida is just beginning. When I was in Plainview, when I was teacher there, I developed the leadership program through our MAP program. And I've always tried to instill leadership qualities in my students. And there's an organization down there called Insight, and they fund Holocaust education in Palm Beach County and beyond. And I've joined them to train leaders down there. So the goal is schools get invited to nominate a student. That student is obligated to sit through, we have 3 5-hour sessions, seminars, workshop style, where they learn the lessons of the Holocaust, which is so important. They learn the lessons, and then they're obligated to bring an activity back to their community and to their schools. And we start with night and deep dive into Elie Wiesel and Auschwitz, then move to Salvage Pages in year 2, and then year 3 is get out there and mentor the younger kids that are coming in. And I'm excited about starting it. It's, again, Florida was my vacation. I was going down there, and I was going to not do this.
Just play pickleball.
And just play pickleball and play in the water. And like I said last year, I with the world the way it is, I can't. What I realized is when I'm not teaching the Holocaust, part of me is missing. I'm not a whole person without it.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
And
it is an amazing thing, and
you get it. You're not a whole person without it either.
I know, and I understand it 100%. So we're grateful that you have decided not to just play pickleball in Florida, and that you are continuing the mission there and bringing HMTC there, and hopefully the schools can see some of our resources here, and it's a great marriage. So it's wonderful, and we appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. I definitely am going to bring materials down from here. I have a stack of them already. I want to bring them Bondi's brother,
yes, and all the materials
and the materials to go with it that
Absolutely.
we developed. I mean, Salvage Pages is great because of the individual diaries, and that's what I try to show people also. Anne Frank is unique. Anne Frank shined a light on the time period, but had Anne Frank survived, I suspect her writing might be a little different.
Right.
And in Salvage Pages, you get a little bit more raw. You get teenagers that have seen how bad it was and how bad it could be.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's all good. Just there's you have to always see the glass being half full, not half empty.
Absolutely.
We can't reach everybody. We're not going to change the world. We're not going to heal the world, but we can do our part. And that's what I say every day when I get up. We just have to do what we have to do.
One person at a time.
Exactly.
A little ripple. You don't know who you're going to touch. I have letters from students. I see my students on social media. I'm very proud to say many of them are out there fighting and standing up for others, being kind, not looking away. So it's very heartwarming.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, otherwise you would have hung up the towel.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I would have found more. No.
Okay.
We know better.
Yes.
The towel gets hung up a little bit, but not for very long.
But not for very long. Just gets substituted out, maybe. Right? That's all. You know? Or enhanced, maybe. Whatever. So let's talk about, and we have touched on this already, in why we do what we do, the motivation, the passion. What would you tell people who maybe don't understand why the survivors mean that much to you, or why Holocaust education means what it does? I mean, what would be some of the things that you would say makes you who you are?
The lessons that we learned, the lessons that we're taught, the times we are living through. We need to be resilient. We need to resist. We need to have the right tools in order to do that. Like when I was invited to join the resistance program, people said it's going to change your life. It completely turned me upside down the way I presented material. When I bring friends here, they go, "Oh, Holocaust, really?" I said, "Give it a try, you'll see." And at the end of every tour, they go, "My God, I didn't know it could be like that." Because why do you need to focus on the horrors? You focus on people that survived, and even the people that, how did they survive? Mm-hmm. What made them? What allowed them to get through it? And I'm not saying that everybody survived that was more optimistic and more upbeat and distracted themselves. Irving would do math problems. Werner did magic tricks. You know, it sounds kind of silly. You're in a concentration camp, so talking about food or doing recipes. We have lots and lots to learn when times get bad. And right now, the world is not in a great place, and we need places to go, to look to hope, to look to. When he's sitting in Auschwitz, I don't think they thought they were going to escape either or get out. And eventually they did. Not all of them, like not most of them. But.
Right. Yes, so that hope is a very important.
Yes, we must keep hope.
We always have to keep hope, and we always, have to think in a positive direction. I believe in that. That's one of the messages, again, that we spend a lot of time here at HMTC. We want the kids to come. We lead them in safely and lead them out safely.
Yes, that's a very, very important concept.
And we want them to feel that they can make a difference, that they can, make some change, that they can look in the mirror and
like the
be
poster
able to come to fruition. Yeah.
The poster we have out there. If only one person has a voice, that voice is very loud. Yeah. That was Malala, right?
Yeah. Okay. And that's I mean, it's true. You know, everybody needs to be able. Not every voice is going to be equitably heard, but every voice needs to be heard. And hearing other people's voices doesn't take away from your own.
No.
And that's part of, sometimes I think, the problem is that people feel that only their voice needs to be heard. Well, as you said, then all we're doing is screaming,
right?
And we're not listening. So
it's very important.
We really need to keep all of those things in check.
And I think the most important, well, not the most important thing, but it is to me, is I've been the family historian. When the Greek family, my husband's family, passed away, I've got all the pictures, I've got all the documents. I'm the only child. I have all my father's material. Passed it to my daughter and to my grandson and my son. My daughter was trained by 3GDC, has been presenting, so I know that our family story will continue. And on her last talk, she brought her son, who was there with her in his old social studies teacher's classroom. So that guy was felling because Jaden was doing a lot of the teaching. So I know that our family history has been passed down to grandchildren. Yeah. And that's really, really important, because what I learned from Irving, who made me adopt him, and Donna, adopting a survivor, adopting a survivor is different than learning about them. It's understanding what makes them tick. It's being able to present them as a human being, as a person with thoughts and feelings, and not just a statistic and just not a number. Like we have that book here that says Jew 6 million times. And every time I look at that book, I tell the kids, imagine each one was a different name.
Right. Yeah.
And we have to know their names. So I did change my presentations where I make sure I name all the people in them.
That's very important. And again, many of our second generation and even our survivors who continue to speak, one of the things that they culminate with is showing the family tree, the legacy,
Yeah.
right? If I hadn't survived, or if my parent hadn't survived, this would not be. And that is a very powerful thing that we have to take into consideration, looking at all of the legacy and where we end up. So thank you so much, Meryl, for being with us today. And for everyone joining us, please like, share, subscribe. And thank you for being with us at HMTV at HMTC.